Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today it is time for the December wrap-up. Let's talk about the last books that I have read in 2023, and then we can start with a clean slate into the new year. So the first book I finished in December was my audiobook called Let Your Hearts Be Light by Quin. This is a gay romance following two characters who are already in their 40s. They both have a child, and the children are signing them up for this holiday thing where families are supposed to spend time together and do Christmassy things. So these two men are kind of smushed together and they don't really like each other because one is very much a sunshine and he's a baker. The other one is very grumpy and he's more of like handyman. So yeah, it was really cute. I felt like this could have been more festive because this is a spicy romance and I have not much experience with those. It's not that I, wouldn't read them, but I just don't seek them out. So this was definitely a new experience for me, and because it is sex between two men, I also can't really say how realistic it is because I have no idea about that. But I did enjoy it. I wish it would have focused a little bit more on the building of the relationship and not just the lusty parts. But in the end I gave it 3.5 stars and I thought it was quite cute. Then the next book I finished was this graphic novel called Quiet Girl in a Noisy World, an introvert story by Tung. And this one is an autobiographical work where we just follow our author as she reflects on the time when she finished studying and started working and also met her husband. And as you can guess from the title, this is about our main character being an introvert and how that makes some things in life just a little bit more difficult. And it was really cute. I really enjoy the art style of this. It was very nice to look at, but ultimately this wasn't something that I really connected with because I would not consider myself an introvert. So a lot of this was also relatable in a way, but just small moments and not the overall experience. So I would say if you are an introvert, you would probably gain so much more from this than I did. And in the end, I gave this 3.5 stars. Then I finished another audiobook, and that one was 12 Days of Christmas by Poppy Alexander. And in this book we are following a young woman who lived in Paris working as a professional chef. And she's going back to the UK, where she's from, because her mother has cancer, and at the beginning of the book she has passed away. And so now our main character is back in the UK, in the town where she grew up, and she's kind of lost because she doesn't have her mom anymore. And so she goes into a coffee shop and she meets a guy that she knew when she was a teenager, and he's like, hey, how do you feel about just staying in my place because you don't really have a place to stay? And they start kind of developing feelings for each other. And then this guy also has this fancy deli, so they connect over food, and they're actually doing a menu for the 12 days of Christmas. So every day they bake something that is connected to the song lyrics, and I thought that was really cute. Now this one does balance darkness and deeper themes such as death of a parent and the question whether you will have cancer as well because of genetics, and also some other darker themes such as unwanted pregnancy, but not with the main couple, that is with some side characters. But it balances those deeper themes with the lightheartedness of the baking and the holiday time and the coming together of family and stuff like that. So I felt the balance worked for me, but I would say do look up trigger warnings for this book because some of the things were just a little bit more deeply dealt with than I expected, I would say. In the end, I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. Then next I finished my reread of These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is the first book in a duology, but also has like spin-off series and stuff like that. I had read this when it came out, but I have been meaning to reread it for a very long time so I could get to the sequel. This is a Romeo and Juliet inspired story that is set in Shanghai in the 1920s, and we're following two teenagers who are the heirs to two rivaling gangs. We have Juliet and Roma, and they have to face a weird monster that also has something to do with a mysterious illness that is going around that is very gory and gruesome, so keep that in mind. And the question is whether they can overcome their differences to face this threat together. I really like this book. I actually preferred it on reread because I think I just knew what to expect from this book, so I had even more fun with it, and I gave it 4 stars in the end. Then I finished my next audiobook, and that one was 3 Holidays and a Wedding. This was by 2 authors, Uzma Jalaluddin and Marissa Stapley, and this one combines 2 perspectives. We have one girl who grew up in a Muslim family, and her sister is going to get married at the end of Ramadan, and for that they want to travel to Canada because that's where her future husband's family is from. Then we have the other perspective, who is a young woman who doesn't really have anyone anymore, but she fell in love with this like mega rich dude, and so they are going to Canada so she can meet his family for the first time. And for some reason these 2 girls end up sitting together in the plane going to Canada, and then they have to do an emergency landing in this like tiny town in Canada that is also famous for being the set of a lot of Christmas movies. And as it so happens, one is shot there right at that moment. And so they are stuck in this town and holiday shenanigans ensue. Now, what I liked about this one is that, as the title suggests, this deals with 3 holidays. So we have Hanukkah, Ramadan and Christmas all happening kind of together. This is also set in the year 2000, probably because that was a year when that actually all happened together. I haven't looked that up, but that's just what I assume. And so we do have like fewer technological things. Our main characters can't just text people and stuff like that. They're like literally stuck in this town. And I really liked it. I had so much fun. I liked the family shenanigans that we get. I liked all of the like festiveness that we get. I always love it when there is some kind of a movie in these books. I don't know why, it's just one of the things that brings me joy. So in the end I gave this one 4 stars as well. Then next up I read Whiteout by Dhonielle, Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk and Nicola Yoon. This is kind of the sequel to Blackout, even though as far as I can tell they're not connected with the stories, so you can read them out of order, I guess. And this one we are in Atlanta, I believe. Yeah, Atlanta. And we are following different groups of teenagers who all are trying to come together to save the relationship of Stevie, who made a big mistake, and now her girlfriend is very mad at her, and so she has to do this one big thing to win her back and to apologize, and so lots of her friends are trying to help. And so we have Stevie's story as a frame, and then we get these individual short stories in between about the other kids, and we learn what they're up to. And then obviously, if you look at the title, there is snow in Atlanta and people don't know how to deal with it, so we do have a big whiteout that complicates things even more. So we have a lot of love stories in this one. It's very cute, very sweet. I did enjoy all of them in a way. There's always one I don't like as much as the others, but it was just a very wholesome read, a very cute read. If you want something for the wintry feels, I would definitely recommend this one. I gave it 4 stars. So at this point in the year, we had made it to my book number 100, and that was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. And this is kind of a sci-fi novella, and we are following 2 agents who are on different sides of the time war. And basically they are going through time and they're trying to fix up things so that their individual future will happen. And during that they start writing letters to each other, at first to gloat, but then feelings start to develop. And I thought this was a really interesting book, definitely different from everything else I've read. And I'm not a big sci-fi reader, so take this with a grain of salt. I thought that the world building was very interesting because you just have to take it in as you go. And there's definitely some mysterious elements as well, which just made it easier to read the book. And I think the one thing I didn't love about this was that we have a huge amount of time that passes for our characters, but we don't see a lot of this because of the way the story is told. So we only ever get these glimpses, and so it feels like the relationship is moving very, very fast. Instead, it is very slow. Like sometimes there is 10 years between the letters and stuff like that, because time just doesn't work the same way for them as it would for us. Also, something I just wanted to feel more for was the actual romance, but I felt like the characters were too similar for me to believe that they would fall in love like that. So in the end I gave it 4 stars, but I was very happy to have this one as my 100th book of the year. Then I also finished another audiobook, and that was The Kingdom of Sweets by Erika Johansen. This is a nutcracker retelling, a very dark, like fairy tale-esque retelling of the story in a way, but I would say it's more of a reimagining because a lot is changed in this one, and that's the biggest gripe I have with it. So basically in this one we are following twin sisters. So we not only have Clara but also her twin sister Natasha, and when they were born, the Drosselmeyer character, who is a wizard, he came to their christening and he assigned Clara to be light and Natasha to be dark, and that will influence their whole lives up until this one Christmas where Drosselmeyer makes his famous gift. So he gives Clara the nutcracker, and for Natasha he has this weird clown. And then from there we do get kind of like the nutcracker idea, and then it digresses vastly from it and has nothing to do with it for the rest of the book. So I would say if you really love the nutcracker and that's what you want, don't read this book. I thought that this had a few issues. For one, I think that this book is in a way quite nonsensical, especially the parts that are set in the Kingdom of Sweets, which in a way makes sense, but it also made it quite hard to follow along. So that was a little bit difficult for me. And then for most of the book, I had no idea where it was set, which felt a bit weird. But then during the end, we learned that it's actually Russia for some reason. And I do not understand, like my brain does not compute because all of the names are kept German. Why is it set in Russia? Except for Natasha. But all of the other names, like Drosselmeyer and Clara, and the family is called the Stahlbaums, it's all German names. How are they all in Russia? And also Conrad. So you can't even say that it is like one family who is like from Germany, but they live in Russia, because all of the families and all of the names are German. Why would they be in Russia? Makes no sense. And these are the things that just make me very angry for some reason. Because it is set in Russia, it also tries to incorporate real politics, like real historical politics that happened, into the story at the end, and I also felt like that was not a good choice. And in the end, I thought this should just have been an original dark fairy tale, not related to the Nutcracker at all. And then I would have liked it more. I gave it very, very kind 3.5 stars because it was so highly anticipated, but it was actually quite the disappointment. So then I did finish The Sinister Mystery of the Mesmerizing Girl by Theodora Goss. I have a complete vlog for this whole series, so if you want you can go and check that out. Same is true for This Is How You Lose the Time War, by the way. This is the third book and the conclusion to the blah 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 Asina Club series. It has a very long name, and I was quite disappointed with this series. I wanted to love it, but it was just fine. It was okay, it's solid. This is a fantasy series that follows characters like Mary Jekyll, the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, and then Catherine, a puma/woman who Dr. Moreau experimented on, and such else. And these women band together to solve mysteries. And I had such high expectations, and they just no, we did not reach those heights, unfortunately, but it was a solid series. It's one where when I was reading it, it was fine, but when I put it away, I never felt like picking it back up. I think that because of the way the story is told, it lost a lot of the intrigue of the mystery, because we do have so many characters who are in all the different places, and so we always know everything that is going on at every point in time. So because of that, we don't really have a mystery to this, and I think if you call your book a sinister mystery, there should be some mystery in here. So that was a bit unfortunate, and I gave it 3.5 stars in the end. Next up, I finished a audiobook. It was a reread. It was The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. Absolutely love that book. This is a reimagining of A Christmas Carol. We have our main character, Holly, who's the daughter of a famous movie director, and when the three ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future, visit her, she doesn't believe it, and so, you know, her death happens, and then she wakes up, and she is suddenly part of Project Scrooge, which is a company who try to reform one Scrooge every year. And she has to be the ghost of Christmas past. That's what I wanted to say. And yeah, she has to try to save other Scrooges. And then after a couple of years of doing this job, there's actually a Scrooge that very much reminds her of herself, and that is Evan Winters III. I really love this book. I would highly recommend if you haven't listened to it. It's such a cozy, Christmassy, festive read that I have reread so many times, and I will continue doing, though I gave it 4.5 stars again. Then I finished reading Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Again, this book will have its own reading vlog that will be up shortly. I really enjoyed this book. I had so much fun reading Elantris. It's my first Brandon Sanderson, and so I was really intrigued to see how I would get on with his writing style, and I really enjoyed it. In this one, we are following a city that has been a city of gods, kind of, so very powerful creatures with great magic. But now it is 10 years later, the city has fallen, and the former gods have become more like weird zombies. But there is still this kind of transformation happening, so normal people can turn into these creatures, and then they are sent to the city Elantris, and they're all kept there. And they're basically kind of dead, so they don't they don't need food, they don't have a heartbeat, but they also don't heal. So when they hurt themselves, it hurts forever. And that drives most of them crazy. I really loved this book. I thought it was so creative and interesting. It had a lot of intrigue. The ending was so tense and the stakes so high. I think that there are still things wrong with it, but while I was reading it, I didn't really mind. It was just so fascinating and just a great final read of the year, so I gave it 4.5 stars. And then last but not least, the book I won't say too much about is Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. And this is a book that is kind of a workbook, and it's supposed to help you figure out what white supremacy is and how you as a white person are part of it. And while I think that the idea of that is very great, I just did not like the way this was done. So the execution of this book just really didn't work for me. I felt that from the very first page, but I did the first 2 weeks of this workbook. Like, I actually tried to do the prompts with all of my might and it just wasn't working. So on the last day of the year, I just decided to give up and read the other 2 weeks as a book without doing the prompts and just see. And I was very glad that I did that, because even just reading it, it just felt wrong to me. Yeah, it just didn't work for me. If you gained something from this, I'm very glad about that, but I did not gain anything. I think that a lot of the concepts in here were very much simplified. They were sometimes connected to each other, but then the differences weren't quite clear. So for example, we do have one chapter about white silence and another chapter about white apathy. And it's so hard to view these as separate constructs, I guess, especially if you're just starting out getting into these things. So I just wasn't quite sure why that was the choice. Like, I do understand it a little bit, but it just didn't feel very well done to me. And then, for example, there is a separate chapter, like a whole ass chapter on white feminism. And that just always bugs me, because obviously white feminism is trash, but I also always feel like white women just get a lot of shit. And I think that white men are just as big of a problem. And I always feel like we talk about the ways that white women are bad so much more nowadays. We focus on the Karens and what they're doing and their white tears and all of that. But I don't know, it makes me feel icky, because I feel like the patriarchy is sometimes working through these books. Like, I am absolutely against all kinds of like feminism that excludes other people, whether it is by race or gender identity or anything like that. But I think that for me personally, fighting against oppression only works if you fight against all of oppression. And let's face it, like, the people who profit from all of oppression are white men. And they also have other attributes, as for example not having a physical disability or a mental disability or chronic illness, or they're not gay, they're heterosexual and stuff like that. So you know what I mean. You know what I mean. And so it bugs me when in a book that only has 28 chapters, one whole chapter is spent telling people about how white feminism is a big problem. So I gave this one 3 stars in the end. And as I said, if this really helped you face your white supremacy, I'm so happy, because we should all do that. But it just did not help me personally. So that's it for my December reading. I would love to hear what your favorite book in December was. Let me know in the comments. Also leave a like if you enjoyed watching this video. I will talk to you very soon. Bye!